Daniel ducked low behind a fallen log as Brutus spun toward the sound, muscles taut, eyes burning with primal awareness. More movement followed, branches cracking, whispered voices, boots crunching frozen earth. Poachers. His heart sank. Of course. The rumors. A tame bear spotted in a remote region, an animal that didn't run from humans, that carried old human things in its mouth. They hadn't come for any bear. They came for this bear, Brutus, and they were close. Daniel scanned the clearing. He counted at least 3 flashlights bobbing through the trees, moving in a tight sweep pattern. 2 coordinated for hikers, 2 quiet for rangers. One of them had a long object slung over his shoulder, rifle. Daniel slipped into the shadows, heart pounding, sweat freezing against his skin. Brutus remained still for a beat, then glanced over his shoulder. They locked eyes. Brutus jerked his head ever so slightly, to the right, toward a thicket of deadwood. Daniel understood. Brutus was guiding him. They moved like ghosts. Brutus stayed ahead, massive form gliding between trees with eerie silence, his ears twitching at every sound. Daniel followed, crouched and breathless, dodging branches and ducking beneath low limbs. In the distance, the poachers were getting closer, their beams slicing the darkness. A voice called out, "Split up! We corner it near the old cabin." Daniel's blood turned to ice. They were boxing him in. Suddenly, Brutus halted, his shoulders tightened. Daniel froze behind a birch trunk. One of the poachers had changed direction, headed straight for them. Brutus didn't growl, didn't panic. Instead, he turned and nudged Daniel behind a fallen tree, then stepped into the open, drawing the flashlight toward him. A sharp voice rang out. "There, I see it." A shot cracked through the trees. Brutus flinched. Daniel nearly screamed. The bear stumbled sideways, just a graze, but blood bloomed against his fur. He didn't run. He circled wide, drawing them away, and disappeared into a dense patch of brush. Daniel didn't hesitate. He took off in the opposite direction, sprinting low and fast, ducking through the undergrowth toward an old memory. A cave. Narrow, deep, hidden behind a curtain of ivy. It had been their secret place. Years ago. When Daniel reached the mouth of the cave, Brutus was already there, limping slightly, breathing hard, but standing tall. Daniel fell to his knees. "Let me help." No hesitation. Brutus turned, lowered himself, and let Daniel touch the wound. The smell of iron filled the cave as Daniel tore open his pack and pulled out a field kit. He cleaned the wound gently, whispering soft reassurances. The bear didn't flinch. It was just like before. 6 years ago, when a sick cub had collapsed in his arms, shivering and afraid. Only now, the cub was a titan of the wild, and he was trusting Daniel all over again. They stayed there until dawn. Outside, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Daniel barely slept. He kept a hand resting on Brutus's side the entire night, feeling the slow rhythm of his breathing. In the early morning, he crawled to the edge of the cave, pulled out the emergency flare from his bag, and lit it. The sky exploded in red. Minutes later, the sound of a rotor. Rescue was coming, but so were the poachers. Voices echoed through the woods. Daniel emerged from the cave, waving his arms at the helicopter above. It hovered for a moment, then tilted and veered west, towards the clearing. He turned back to Brutus, and froze. One of the poachers had found them. He stepped out with a rifle raised, fury in his eyes. "You led us right to it." Daniel stepped in front of Brutus without thinking. The man aimed. Then Brutus moved. Not in rage, not in violence, in protection. He surged forward and placed himself between Daniel and the rifle, massive body shielding the man who once saved him. A shot rang out, but this time from behind. The poacher fell to the ground as 2 rangers tackled him, weapons drawn. More followed, securing the area, cuffing the others. The nightmare had ended. Daniel turned to Brutus. The bear was still. Then he exhaled and sat back, unharmed. The rangers stared, stunned. A bear protected a human? Daniel didn't answer. The story spread like wildfire. Media outlets called it the miracle reunion. Wild bear protects former trainer after 6 years apart. Experts were baffled. Behaviorists debated memory versus instinct. But none could explain the footage. Brutus shielding Daniel, letting him clean his wound, responding to his voice. A few called it fake. Most were just awestruck. But with attention came consequences. Wildlife authorities issued a verdict. Brutus must remain wild. He had adapted, integrated. Interfering again could compromise his survival. Daniel understood, but this time it wasn't a decision made for them. It was theirs. He met Brutus at the tree line one final time. No cages, no sedation, just the glove between them. Brutus approached, nuzzled Daniel, then turned, and disappeared into the trees. Months passed. Daniel returned to his cabin. The story cooled, the headlines faded. But one morning, after a fresh snowfall, he checked a trail cam by the river. What he saw made him drop his coffee. A single frame. A huge bear. Standing alone, looking toward the camera. And at its feet, logs, arranged in a perfect circle. The same game they played when Brutus was small. Just a coincidence. Everyone said so. But Daniel knew better. He stared at the image, eyes misting. "Some bonds go beyond time," he whispered, "beyond memory, beyond fear." He touched the glove, now framed by the window. Brutus never forgot, and neither did I. The forest air bit colder the deeper Daniel pushed into it. Each step was deliberate, a silent war between hope and exhaustion. The terrain was brutal. Fallen trees, hidden creeks, patches of ice that snapped like bones beneath his boots. But he kept going, eyes fixed on the GPS signal marking the old ranger station's coordinates. He hadn't seen the building in nearly a decade. It was gutted long ago, left for rot when newer facilities were built closer to the highway. But something about that place always lingered. Wild, forgotten, and yet familiar. Brutus had once wandered near it as a cub, curious about the scent of fuel and rust. It had been a place of discovery, of early bonding. Maybe, somehow, that connection had pulled him back. As the trees thinned, revealing the fractured skeleton of the station, Daniel froze. The silence was overwhelming. Not the stillness of calm, but the silence of presence. He made camp at the edge of the clearing. No fire, no scent, just the wind and the ache in his chest. He opened the old wooden crate and pulled out the worn leather glove. Cracked, sun-faded, still holding the ghost of teeth marks. Brutus used to carry it everywhere, like a cub would cling to his mother's scent. Daniel set it gently on a mossy stump at the center of the clearing. Then he took out the speaker. He hit play. His own voice echoed softly into the woods. 6 years old, clipped from an old recording when Brutus was just learning his name. A mix of cues and lullabies, spoken in the slow, calming tone Daniel always used to soothe him. Then he waited, and the forest stayed still. Time passed slowly. A squirrel darted across the branches. A crow croaked somewhere above, but no rustling in the underbrush. No movement. Daniel's fingers curled tight around his knees. The sun dipped lower, washing the world in copper. Then something shifted. Not a sound, not yet, but a feeling. And then, from between two trees, a shadow emerged. Massive, fluid, cautious. A bear stepped into the clearing. Its fur thicker now, dusted with flecks of gray, body heavier but unmistakably powerful. The kind of creature that silenced everything in its presence. Daniel's breath caught. He didn't move, didn't even blink. The bear stopped mid-step, ears forward, nostrils twitching. Its eyes locked on the glove, and then its chest expanded with a deep breath, one Daniel could feel across the clearing. A soundless exhale, then another step forward, closer, still closer. It moved like a memory, part dream, part muscle. The same gait Brutus used to have, slow but curious. The same hesitation when encountering something familiar in a strange context. Then, with a cautious grace, the bear leaned down and sniffed the glove. Seconds stretched. Then, its jaws opened just slightly. The bear picked up the glove, carefully, as if it had always known it didn't need to chew, just hold. It sat back on its haunches, the glove dangling from its mouth exactly the way Brutus used to carry it during their walks. Daniel's hands trembled. A sound escaped his throat, half breath, half disbelief. He took one step forward. "Brutus." The bear looked at him and froze. The glove dropped. Daniel took another step, heart pounding. Then he whispered the old cue. Home. It was a word they used during early training. It meant return, calm, trust. The bear blinked, stiffened, took one cautious step forward, then another. Daniel stood perfectly still. Then a sound escaped the bear, low, guttural, emotional, not a growl, not a threat. A moan, deep in the chest, pulled from the soul. The bear leaned in. Daniel didn't run. He stood as the massive creature rubbed its head against his chest, slow, deliberate, and impossibly gentle. Daniel gasped, the air catching in his throat. Tears blurred his vision. He reached up with both hands and touched the bear's coarse fur, thicker now, but still carrying that familiar feel beneath the layers of time. "Brutus," he whispered again, voice cracking. The bear let out another soft moan and gently pawed at him. Once, then again. It was the same gesture Brutus used to make when he wanted Daniel to follow him or sit down beside him. Daniel crumpled to his knees. Tears rolled freely now. 6 years of grief and guilt, washed away in a single impossible moment. It was him. He never forgot. They stayed there in silence, the glove between them, the clearing frozen in time. Daniel stroked the bear's fur slowly, whispering old stories half for Brutus, half for himself. And then, from the distance, crack, both of them flinched. The sound echoed, sharp and unmistakable. Daniel's eyes darted to the tree line. Brutus rose to his full height, scanning the forest with sudden alertness. Another crack, closer this time. Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. He reached instinctively for the crate and grabbed the second glove, tossing it toward Brutus, who caught it midair. Then he stood. Someone was out there, and they weren't alone anymore.